I was standing in my driveway, staring at the empty space where my truck should have been, when I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. It was a text from my wife, Linda. "Jake needed to borrow your truck for a few hours. Hope that's okay." I read it 3 times. He didn't ask. He just took it. I stood there for a moment, the morning sun beating down on the concrete, and felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something quieter. Something that had been building for years and had finally found a shape. I'm 62 years old. I've owned that truck for 8 years. It's a 2016 Ford F-150, silver, with a slight dent in the tailgate from when I backed into a post at the hardware store. I've kept it clean, kept it maintained, kept it running like it was new. It's mine. And Jake had just driven away in it like it was community property. I didn't respond to Linda's text. I walked back inside, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. Linda had left for work an hour earlier. Jake, my stepson, had apparently left even earlier than that with my keys. I thought about calling him. I thought about calling Linda back and asking her why she thought it was acceptable to give permission for something that wasn't hers to give. But I didn't do either of those things. Instead, I picked up my phone, opened the contacts, and scrolled down to the non-emergency police line. I reported my truck stolen. The dispatcher asked me a series of questions. Make, model, color, license plate number. I answered them calmly. She asked if I knew who might have taken it. I said I didn't. She asked if I wanted to file a report. I said I did. She told me an officer would follow up and that they'd keep an eye out for the vehicle. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat there, sipping my coffee, and waited. I loved Linda, and I understood that she loved her son. So I kept my mouth shut and my wallet open. When Jake first moved in, I told myself it would be temporary. A few months, maybe, just until he got back on his feet. But a few months became a year, and then 2, and then 4. He never paid rent. He never contributed to groceries. He came and went as he pleased, sometimes disappearing for days without a word, then reappearing like nothing had happened. And Linda always welcomed him back. I tried to be patient. I tried to be understanding. I told myself that this was what you did when you married someone with kids. You accepted the whole package. But over time, I started to notice things. Little things. The way Jake would take food from the fridge without asking. The way he'd leave his dishes in the sink for me to clean. The way he'd borrow money from his mother and never pay it back. And the way he looked at me, not with gratitude, not with respect, with something else. Something that felt a lot like contempt. I remember one night about 2 years ago when I came home from work and found Jake sitting on the couch playing video games. I'd had a long day. My back was killing me, and I was looking forward to sitting down and watching the news. But Jake was sprawled out across the entire couch, his legs up on the coffee table, a bag of chips spilling crumbs onto the cushions. I asked him if he could move over a bit so I could sit down. He didn't even look at me. "I'm in the middle of a game," he said. I stood there for a moment, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Then I turned around and went to the bedroom. Linda came home an hour later. I told her what happened. She sighed and said, "He's just stressed. He's been applying for jobs all week." I didn't say anything. I'd learned by then that there was no point. It's 1,000 small moments that pile up until you can barely breathe under the weight of them. Like the time Jake used my electric drill to work on his car and returned it with a dead battery and grease all over the handle. I asked him to clean it, and he said he'd get to it later. He never did. A week later, I needed the drill for a project and had to spend an hour cleaning it myself. Or the time he borrowed my phone charger because he couldn't find his, and then I found it 3 weeks later, tangled up in his bedsheets. When I asked him about it, he shrugged and said, "I thought you had another one." Or the time I bought a 6-pack of my favorite beer and put it in the fridge, only to come home the next day and find it gone. Jake had drunk all of it and left the empty bottles on the counter. When I mentioned it, he said, "You can just buy more, right?" Every single time, Linda would tell me to let it go. She'd say Jake didn't mean anything by it, that he was just thoughtless, that he'd grow out of it. But he didn't grow out of it. He got worse. Because when there are no consequences for bad behavior becomes the norm. I paid for his car insurance when his license got suspended after he got caught speeding 3 times in 6 months. I covered his phone bill when he said he couldn't make the payment. Turns out he'd spent his paycheck at a casino. I loaned him $500 to fix his transmission, which he never paid back. I bought him clothes, paid for his meals, and never asked for anything in return. And every time, Linda would thank me and tell me how lucky Jake was to have me in his life. But Jake never thanked me, not once. Instead, he started treating my things like they were his. He'd use my tools and not put them back. He'd eat the leftovers I'd saved for lunch. He'd take my phone charger, my jacket, my cologne, and now, apparently, my truck. I thought about that as I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for the phone to ring. I thought about all the times I'd let things slide because I didn't want to start a fight, all the times I'd convinced myself that it wasn't worth the hassle, that it was easier to just replace whatever Jake had taken or broken than to confront him about it. But this was different. This wasn't a phone charger or a 6-pack of beer. This was my truck, my property, something I'd worked hard to buy and maintain, and he'd taken it without even asking. And I was done letting things slide. I saved the voicemail and didn't call him back. Instead, I walked to the window and looked out at the street. It was a beautiful day, the kind of day where everything feels crisp and clear, the kind of day where you can see things for what they really are. And what I saw clearly for the first time in years was that I'd been enabling Jake just as much as Linda had. By staying silent, by letting things go, by always being the bigger person, I'd taught him that he could do whatever he wanted without facing consequences. But that lesson ended today. 10 minutes later, Linda called. "What the hell is going on?" she said as soon as I answered. "Jake just called me from the side of the road. He said you reported the truck stolen?" "I did," I said. "Why would you do that?" "Because it was stolen. He's my son." "He didn't ask permission," I said. "He took my truck without asking. That's theft." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You're being ridiculous," she said finally. "He just needed to borrow it for a few hours. I told him it was fine." "You don't own the truck," I said. "You can't give permission for something that isn't yours." "Are you serious right now?" "Yes." "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for him? He's on the side of the road with police officers treating him like a criminal." "He took something that didn't belong to him without asking," I said. "What else would you call that?" "I'd call it a misunderstanding. I'd call it theft." She hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the empty driveway. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindictive. I just felt tired. Tired of being taken for granted, tired of being treated like a doormat, tired of watching my wife's son walk all over me while she made excuses for him. For 4 years, I'd kept my mouth shut. I'd swallowed my frustration and told myself that it was worth it for Linda's sake. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being a person in my own house. I'd become a resource, a wallet, a convenience, and I was done. I thought about Jake sitting in the back of a patrol car, humiliated and angry. I thought about Linda, who would never forgive me if I went that far. I thought about what this would do to our marriage, to our family, to the fragile peace we'd managed to maintain for 4 years. And then I thought about my truck, sitting in my driveway, taken without a word. "No," I said. "I just want my property back." The officer seemed relieved. "Understood, sir. We'll have it towed to the impound lot. You can pick it up tomorrow." "Thank you," I said. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of the empty house and realized something. I didn't want to destroy Jake. I didn't want to ruin his life. I just wanted him to understand that actions have consequences, that he couldn't keep taking from me without giving anything back, that I wasn't just a background character in his story. I was a person with rights, with boundaries, with dignity. And if he couldn't respect that, then he couldn't be part of my life. I set the table for 2, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down to eat. Linda didn't come out. I ate in silence, listening to the sounds of the house settling around me. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the distant sound of traffic outside. It felt strange, eating alone. For 4 years, I'd shared this table with Linda and Jake, navigating the awkward silences and forced conversations. And now, for the first time, I was alone by choice. It didn't feel as bad as I thought it would. About an hour later, she came back out. Her eyes were red. "I can't believe you did that," she said. "I can't believe he took my truck," I said. "He's family." "Family doesn't steal from each other. You humiliated him. He humiliated himself." She stared at me for a long time, and I could see the conflict in her face. She wanted to defend her son. She wanted to be angry at me, but somewhere deep down, I think she knew I was right. "He didn't mean any harm," she said quietly. "He never does," I said. "But that doesn't change what he did." She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. She looked tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Like she'd been carrying a weight for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to put it down. "I don't know what you want me to say," she said. "I don't want you to say anything," I said. "I want you to think about whether you'd be this upset if someone else had taken my truck. If it was a stranger or a coworker or anyone other than Jake, would you be defending them? Would you be telling me I overreacted?" She didn't answer. She just turned around and went back to the bedroom. I cleaned up the dishes, put away the leftovers, and went to bed in the guest room. He just went straight to his room and started packing. I stayed in the living room, drinking my coffee and reading the paper. I could hear him moving around upstairs, opening drawers, zipping bags. At one point I heard something hit the floor, hard, and then a muffled curse. I didn't go up to check on him. I thought about all the times I'd gone up to check on him. All the times I'd helped him move his furniture, fix his computer, jump-start his car. All the times I'd dropped what I was doing because Linda asked me to, because she said Jake needed help, and I was the only one who could provide it. And I thought about how, in all those years, Jake had never once helped me with anything, not once. About 20 minutes later, he came downstairs with 2 duffel bags slung over his shoulder. He walked past me without making eye contact and headed for the door. Then he stopped. "You know what?" he said, turning around. "You're a real piece of work." I looked up from my paper. "I needed that truck for a job interview," he said. "A real job. And you got me arrested." "You weren't arrested," I said. "You were detained." "Same thing?" "It's not." He shook his head, and I could see the anger in his eyes. But underneath the anger, I saw something else, something that looked a lot like shame. "You never liked me," he said. "You've always treated me like I was some kind of burden." "I treated you like family," I said. "I gave you a place to live, food to eat, and money when you needed it. And you never once said thank you." "I didn't ask for any of that." "Your mother did." He stared at me, his jaw tight. "You think you're so noble, don't you? You think you're this great guy who took in his wife's loser son and suffered in silence. But you're just an asshole who called the cops on someone for borrowing a truck." "I called the cops on someone who stole from me," I said. "There's a difference." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, man." And then he turned and walked out. I listened to the door slam behind him, and then I went back to my paper. About the ways we'd grown apart over the years, slowly and imperceptibly, like 2 people drifting on separate currents. I thought about the fights we'd had, not many because I always backed down, and the compromises I'd made. I thought about the life I'd imagined when I married her and the life I was actually living. And I wondered if it was worth it. Not the marriage necessarily, but the peace I'd sacrificed to maintain it. The dignity I'd surrendered to avoid conflict. The parts of myself I'd given up because it was easier than standing my ground. On the 4th day, she finally broke the silence. "Do you regret it?" she asked. We were sitting in the living room, the TV on, but neither of us watching it. "No," I said. She nodded slowly. "I thought you'd say that." "Do you?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. I keep thinking about all the times I defended him, all the times I told you he just needed more time, and I wonder if I was wrong." "You weren't wrong," I said. "You were being a mother. But at some point, being a mother means holding your kids accountable." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "I'm tired," she said. "I'm tired of being caught in the middle. I'm tired of defending him. I'm tired of making excuses." "Then stop," I said. She didn't respond. She just turned back to the TV, and we sat there in silence for the rest of the night. But something had shifted. I could feel it. Linda never mentioned it, and Jake certainly never mentioned it. Then one day I saw him pull up in a brand new pair of expensive sneakers, $400 easy. When I asked him about it, he said a friend had given them to him as a gift. I didn't believe him, but I didn't push it. That night, I lay in bed thinking about those sneakers, thinking about the $200 he still owed me, thinking about all the times I'd let things like this slide because I didn't want to be the guy who kept score. But the problem with not keeping score is that eventually you lose track of how much you've given away. And by the time you realize it, there's nothing left. And one of those rules was, never let anyone take advantage of you. When I was a kid, I thought he was too strict, too unforgiving. I remember thinking that I'd never be like him, that I'd be more understanding, more patient, more willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I was. But now I wonder if my father was onto something. If maybe he understood that kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all. It's just permission for people to walk all over you. I wish I could talk to him now. I wish I could ask him what he would have done in my situation. But I think I already know. He would have done exactly what I did, and he wouldn't have lost a minute of sleep over it. He said he was sorry for putting her in a difficult position, that he understood why I'd reacted the way I did, and that he was going to start looking for his own place. Linda seemed relieved. She told him she was proud of him, that she believed in him, and that she'd always be there if he needed her. But she didn't ask me to forgive him, and I didn't offer, because the truth is I don't know if I can. For years, I put up with disrespect because I didn't want to cause problems. I told myself that it was easier to just let things go, that it wasn't worth the fight. But what I learned is that silence isn't the same as peace, and sometimes the only way to protect your dignity is to draw a line and refuse to cross it, even if it costs you something. Jake moved into an apartment with a friend and got a job at a warehouse. He texts Linda every few days to check in, but he doesn't come by the house. And I'm okay with that. Linda and I are still working through things. There's a distance between us that wasn't there before, a kind of quiet understanding that some boundaries can't be uncrossed. But we're trying, and that's more than I expected. We've started going to counseling. It was Linda's idea, and I agreed because I thought it might help. The therapist is a woman in her 50s named Dr. Brennan, and she has a way of asking questions that makes you see things you didn't want to see. In our third session, she asked me, "When did you start feeling invisible in your own home?" I thought about it for a long time, and then I realized it wasn't one moment. It was 100 moments, 1,000. Every time I let something slide, every time I swallowed my frustration, every time I chose peace over self-respect. And I told her that. She nodded and said, "And what changed?" "I stopped choosing peace," I said. Linda cried during that session. She said she hadn't realized how much I'd been holding in, how much I'd been sacrificing. She said she was sorry, and I believed her. But apologies don't undo years of neglect. They're a start, but they're not a solution. It was about standing up for myself after years of being walked over. It was about refusing to let someone take from me without consequence. And if that makes me the bad guy in Jake's story, I can live with that. Because in my story, I'm the man who finally found his voice, and I'm not giving it back. "I think I've been enabling him," she said. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I've been so focused on making sure he was okay, making sure he didn't struggle, that I never stopped to think about what I was teaching him. And what I taught him is that he doesn't have to be responsible, that someone will always bail him out, that he can do whatever he wants, and there won't be consequences. She looked at me then, and there were tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry I put you in that position. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening, and I'm sorry I got mad at you for doing what I should have done a long time ago." I reached over and took her hand. "It's not too late," I said. She nodded. "I know, but it's going to be hard." "Most things worth doing are," I said. We sat there for a while, not saying anything, just holding hands and watching the sky turn from orange to purple to black. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same side. My job is to protect my boundaries and refuse to let anyone cross them without permission. My job is to live my life with dignity and self-respect, even if it means disappointing the people I love. Because at the end of the day, you teach people how to treat you. And for years, I taught Jake that he could treat me however he wanted, and I'd just take it. But I'm done teaching that lesson. I'm 62 years old. I've worked hard my entire life. I've been a machinist for 40 years, waking up at 5 every morning, coming home with grease under my fingernails and aching shoulders. I've sacrificed for my family, for my wife, for my stepson. And I have nothing to apologize for. I reported my truck stolen because it was stolen, and if that makes me the bad guy, so be it. Because I'd rather be the bad guy who respects himself than the good guy who doesn't. There's a quiet satisfaction that comes with standing up for yourself. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's just a steady, calm knowledge that you did the right thing even when it was hard. I feel that now. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not resentful. I'm just at peace. Because I know that I didn't overreact, I know that I didn't do anything wrong, and I know that if I had to do it all over again, I'd make the same choice. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the kind of man I want to be, the kind of man who stands up for himself without being cruel, the kind of man who holds people accountable without holding grudges, the kind of man who knows the difference between kindness and weakness. I think I'm becoming that man. It took me 62 years, but I'm getting there. And maybe that's the real lesson in all of this. It's never too late to find your voice. It's never too late to draw a line. It's never too late to say, enough. Because the moment you stop letting people take from you is the moment you start living for yourself. And that's a lesson worth learning, no matter how long it takes. But because I reminded myself that I matter, that my things matter, that my boundaries matter, that my dignity matters, and no one, not my stepson, not anyone, gets to take that away from me. Not anymore. Jake called me last week. It was late, almost 10 o'clock, and I was getting ready for bed when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hey," he said. "Hey." There was a long pause. I wanted to apologize," he said, "for everything, for taking your truck, for being a shitty person to live with, for all of it." I didn't say anything. I just listened. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," he continued, "and I realize now that I was wrong. I thought you were just being a dick, but you weren't. You were just standing up for yourself, and I should have respected that." "Okay," I said. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I just wanted you to know that I get it now, and I'm sorry." We sat in silence for a moment, and I could hear the sound of traffic in the background. He was outside somewhere, maybe walking home from work. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "Yeah, well, that's all I wanted to say." "Jake?" "Yeah?" "Thank you." He paused. "For what?" "For calling." Another pause, and then, "Yeah, no problem." We hung up. I stood there for a long time, staring at my phone, and then I went to bed. I walked outside and stood in the driveway looking at my truck. It was just a truck, a piece of metal and machinery, nothing special. But to me it represented something more. It represented the moment I stopped letting people take from me, the moment I decided that my dignity was worth fighting for, the moment I realized that I didn't have to be the nice guy all the time, I just had to be a man who respected himself. And that's exactly what I am. I'm not perfect. I'm not a hero. I'm just a 62-year-old man who got tired of being walked on. And I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, the only person who has to be proud of me is me. And I am